Attention hospital HR in Canada. Are you in search of the perfect insurance solution for your part-time and casual employees? Look no further. Meet Healthcare Providers Group Insurance Plan, your go-to option for ensuring the well-being of your team.
With healthcare providers, also known as HCP, you're not just providing insurance, you're providing peace of mind. HCP's comprehensive coverage includes medical, dental, and vision benefits designed to keep your part-time employees happy and healthy. There's even a package that includes life, long-term disability, and accidental death, disease, and dismemberment coverage for those who already have other group health and dental coverage.
It's time to bridge the gap between full-time and part-time staff benefits. With Healthcare Providers Group Insurance Plan, you can level the playing field and show your commitment to all of your team members.
Join the community of over 145 hospital sites who have made the smart choice. Visit healthcareproviders.ca today to discover how HCP can help you support your team in a meaningful way.
Is this thing on?
I think they can hear us a bit better now. Do you think they are ready to change the status quo?
It's one thing to get them listening, but now let's get them to act.
You are now about to witness the strength of nursing knowledge.
Hi, and welcome to the Gritty Nurse Podcast, an unfiltered and unapologetic podcast which discusses health and healthcare. My name is Amy.
My name is Sarah.
And we are your hosts.
Don't forget to hit the subscribe button wherever you listen to podcasts, Google, Spotify, iTunes, or our YouTube page. Please rate and review us.
Make sure you get our book, The Wisdom of Nurses. There's no better gift than giving the wisdom of nurses to nurses during Nursing Week. Hi, and welcome to the Gritty Nurse Podcast, an unfiltered discussion related to health and healthcare. My name is Amy.
And my name is Sarah.
And we are your hosts. So today we have such a fun and exciting episode. I mean, I believe these two nurses need no introduction, but I'm going to pass it to Sarah because she got to meet these two amazing nurses and she'll talk a little bit about them.
Yeah, so I was on NurseCon back in April and I met these two fine ladies and I was actually kind of in awe of meeting them. And I think they get this a lot, but I was like, hey, my name is Sarah. And then 5 minutes in, I'm like, maybe we should be on each other's podcast, thinking that's probably not going to happen. But these ladies are amazing. They are powerhouses. They are doing great things down in the States. And without further ado, I'd love to introduce Nurse Jessica and Nurse Erica. Thank you so much for coming onto the podcast.
Thank you so much for having us.
So glad to be here. Thank you.
And, you know, this is actually the first time we've had two nurse podcasters on at the same time.
Right,
so
yeah.
like,
Oh, really?
yeah. We usually have one guest on at a time, or if it's two, it's like a couple, like we've had a husband, wife. I know you're not husband and wife, but it's like, that's the only comparison we really have.
Right.
So maybe you
sometimes we fight like we are, but you know.
I knew you were going to say that. I knew it.
Well, I mean, like when we first started the podcast, people thought that we lived together. Like
yes,
they wanted,
it was so bizarre.
Like during the pandemic, they wanted to do interviews and they would say like, Amy, so where's Sarah? And she's like, well, she's
at her own home,
in her
you know,
own home with her own family. Like we do a lot together, but not that much together.
Yeah.
That's okay. Many people think Erica and I are a lesbian couple. Not that there's anything wrong with lesbians. Kudos to the lesbians, you know, but anytime if I post a lot of pictures or stuff online, I've had some people like comment and say, why are you flaunting that that's your girlfriend? Like, I'm like, I know.
Even if she was, it's not their business,
right?
but it's not.
Right? Exactly.
Right.
Who cares? So yeah, she's my husband, my lesbian. She's everything.
Good to know. Well, it's kind of crazy because although people had thought we lived together, Sarah does live like 5 minutes from my house.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. So we
That's
definitely do
so
a lot
handy.
together.
We're on opposite coasts, so it makes it difficult. We have to travel to be together, and we go to different nursing events, and then we try to make the most of it when we're together.
Okay,
Mhm.
cool. But
Yeah, I
that's so
saw
good.
that you did an episode together, and I'm like, oh, maybe that was when you did your Ohio rally and you happened to be together already.
I'm trying to remember
Did we
which
do?
episode we did together, but we've had a
We
couple.
tried to do content in Ohio in the hotel room, and the
That's the one I
Wi-Fi
saw.
gods were not smiling on us, and
No, no.
it was a disaster.
Oh
Yeah,
no.
yeah. Was not good.
Well, I can't imagine that very many people don't know who you are, but just in case they don't, could you please introduce yourself? So Erica first and then Jessica.
Sure. So I'm go by Nurse Erica or the Nurse Erica on social media. I'm on all the major platforms. A little bit of background about me is I'm a registered nurse. I've worked in pediatrics. I've been in nursing since I was 18 or 19, first as a CNA. So forever and ever. All things pediatrics, eventually was promoted to nursing management. And from there, eventually parlayed that into hospice with a specific focus in pediatric hospice. And that's what I do now as far as program development. As far as my advocacy online, it's really focused on advocating and empowering nurses. So that is a pretty broad umbrella. It's everything from the importance and struggles of union organizing to supporting the nurse-centric legislation, particular focus on violence against nurses, and kind of everything in between.
Wow, that sounds like so much like work, and we're advocates too. So thank you for all that you do. And I definitely would love to hear, maybe not today, but a little bit more about, your pediatric hospice type of work. But I mean,
Yeah.
I think all around that's such great work. And we do need more nursing advocates. So thank you for what you do.
Thank you.
And
Yes,
Jessica, a little bit
thank you,
about
Erica.
yourself.
My name's Nurse Jessica Seitz. I have been a nurse since 2000, so that's a long time, 24 years. Labor and delivery is my go-to. It's what I've done I know, my entire, I don't know anything else, nor would I really ever want to.
Right.
Yeah, I have recently left bedside nursing in the last 2 years probably, and focus strictly on social media, and that includes all of my personal sites, Nurse Jessica sites, and our Nurses Uncorked podcast as well with Nurse Erica. I do I guess I'm like a combination kind of person. I do primarily comedy. Nursing comedy is my go-to, with a mix in of little stabs at what the real problem is. So it's like comedy with advocacy, but Erica does the real advocacy, and I kind of make fun of the issues. I don't know if that's a good way of explaining it. And slash influencer. I don't know. It's a little bit of everything. But I'm a big talker, and I like to make people laugh a little bit in this crazy nursing world that we live in right now. I hope I answered that.
Yeah, of course. I mean, we do need to laugh. Like, I think sometimes if we don't laugh, we'll end up crying, which is probably
Right,
other
yeah.
reality. And yeah, no, I mean, I think what you're doing is important as well.
Yeah,
that's where I
definitely.
was when I was on my way out. I was of bedside. I was crying, and I was tired of crying. So
That's
it
fair.
was time to do something that made me happy.
For sure.
Awesome. Yeah, we'll get a little bit more into that. But before we do, I know that there's probably something that you're best known for in the nursing world. So when you first got started on social media, was there like a video that went viral, or was there something that kind of just put you in the spotlight? So we'll start with Jessica and then go to Erica.
I remember specifically, yes, I grew first on Facebook, and like a lot of people, right around the pandemic, it really got big. I had actually started a little bit before that, but when the pandemic hit, it really kind of took off. One video that I did, and it was actually a very long comedic video, but it was about working 3 12s in a row. And it was like I made up some crazy song. It was like my first of 3 in a row today. Where you kind of start out all happy on your first day, like I can do it, and
Right.
it takes you like through the gradual progression of, by the end, you're disheveled and your mascara is
Yeah.
and you're like, give me the strong Cuban coffee, and that video took off and went viral. at that point. So I would say that that was my first like big kind of comedic video break. And then it just kind of
Went from there.
snowballed from there. Yeah.
A lot of your videos make me laugh. So and now I'm gonna have to search for that first 312. Your
Yeah.
312
Oh my
because I
gosh,
don't
it's
think I've
so
seen that one.
embarrassing.
Oh,
Please.
you know we're gonna run the clip, right?
We're gonna run the clip.
Please, and that was back in the day when Facebook would only pay you if it was 3 minutes or longer. So
Wow.
I had any comedic video I did, if I wanted to monetize it, I'd have to stretch it out to 3 minutes. So it's a lot of me singing. It's very interesting.
It's my first of 3 in a row today. Row today, row today. Ain't nothing gonna get in my way. Get in my way.
It's all good. Every once in a while I break out in tune. Sarah looks at me like, please don't, Amy.
And I'm
But
like,
it's all
oh,
good.
I gotta join in, but I can't do more than 30 seconds.
Yeah,
It's just
we
not
keep
happening.
it a little bit shorter than 3
Actually,
minutes.
maybe if there's alcohol involved, I could go a bit longer.
Oh, we
Right.
forgot to bring our
True.
favorite drinks.
Oh shoot, we didn't.
Damn it.
But that we can do that.
we can do
when
that
go
next
on
time.
yours.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
definitely. That'd be awesome.
absolutely.
All right. And Erica, how about you? How did you kind of get into the spotlight?
What's your claim to fame?
Yeah, I don't know that there was one viral video in particular. I've had several viral videos, but I would say my claim to fame is kind of a broad, having the courage to call out these huge healthcare organizations and specific administrators and politicians directly. When I started on social media, there was virtually no one talking about things from a nursing leadership perspective. It was a lot of bedside nurses and talking about their struggle, but there was really no one, because here's the thing, it comes with such great risk, right? So if you are still working at all, you are pretty much digging your own grave if you start to talk about the things that happen behind the curtain that I've been privy to, that I've been lucky enough to see both sides. So I think that probably is my claim to fame more than anything, is just having the courage to call people out, because I'm really at a point after being in nursing for so long that it's not that I don't care, but whatever happens, happens. You know, like if you want to terminate me, that's fine. I'm going to continue talking about the things that nurses have been prevented from talking about for generations.
Yeah, that resonates so much with us because that's exactly what we did. And we started our podcast right before the pandemic. So I think there's a lot of hate given to managers, and not all managers are bad. And you're a perfect example of someone who's actually trying to do something. But there's a lot of hate given to managers and people in leadership. And it's not always, like, I would say, like, if you're a low level manager, like you're not a CEO or a VP, there's often not a lot you can do either.
Yeah,
it's
like the middle management, and the shit rolls down
the
hill. It comes up to you too. It's just like, oh my God. Yeah, we could definitely connect in terms of just, and like Sarah said, it resonates with us because that's kind of our own claim to fame too, that we had just started calling folks out, and we had both left our jobs previously and just said, you know, this is why there are issues within nursing. So again, I think that it's so honorable that you do that. We always get the question, I'm sure you get this too, is like, how do you continue to call people out while you're working in nursing? And maybe I'll bounce it to you and see if there's a different answer than there is for us. Like, how do you continue to, you know, call out specific administrators while you are doing the work that you're doing?
Yeah, I've definitely paid the price. In the past, I've talked about that before. I've absolutely been retaliated against and terminated for what I do online. And I think that is, side note, something that we need to stop living in shame about. You know, there's a lot of shame surrounding any kind of nurse that is reported, say, to the Board of Nursing, or that is terminated or anything. And so we don't talk about that. It gets swept under the rug. But in any case, yeah, it comes with risk. I'm not oblivious to the fact that if something happens with my current job, who's going to want to hire Nurse Erica in nursing?
I'll hire you.
Because I think you could find some people to hire you.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, because there's always the risk that I'm going to talk about something that an organization is doing wrong, which I never have for a current employer. Never, ever, ever. Nor would I. But it's a risk I'm willing to take. I think that it's important. And I will say, I'm really good at retaining staff. So typically where I work, there is very little nurse turnover.
Right.
If I have a nurse leave, I can get a nurse that same day.
Wow.
People tend to want to work with me. And I was also smart enough early on to learn the ins and outs of marketing. So I know how to bring an organization income, not just run the managerial side of things for nursing.
Well,
So it makes me a little marketable.
I think
Plus I'm
that's
the
a
only
treat.
nurse in my state that is double board certified in pediatrics, and I'm one of only, or in pediatric hospice and regular hospice rather. And I'm one of only, I think, a dozen in the country that are. So, I do things to set myself apart, but I'm well aware that there's risk.
Yeah.
And she's somebody you don't want to piss off. I can tell you that.
Yeah.
Well, we'll have to see that side at some point in time too. I think that
not that I've ever seen it. Never.
No, you've never
Just
seen
once
it.
or twice.
Once or twice. Oh dear. Well, I think all nurses have that side, but I think maybe we need to see more of that side. I think that's the whole aspect of us advocating and saying we're tired of the bullshit. We're tired of the things.
That's why you would want Erica on your side.
Exactly.
Exactly. Right.
And maybe to run your social media too.
Exactly. The marketing, right?
Yeah.
There's many different sides to both of you, right? So one of the things that I want to get into is some of the advocacy work that you both have done, even though, you said, Jessica, that you don't do advocacy work. You do. Comedy is still actually a form of advocacy because, we can talk about other comedians that do this work, but it is still a form of advocacy. But I want to talk a little bit about something called Pass the Patient Safety Act. So maybe, Erica, if you can start telling me a little bit about that, and then we'll jump into talking to Jessica about, what happened in Ohio.
Sure.
Are you referring to the federal legislation, not the Ohio one, I assume?
Yes, the federal one first.
Yes. Yeah. So the technical name, I don't know why we always give them such long, ridiculous names, but it's the Nurse Staffing Standards for Hospital Patient Safety and Quality of Care Act.
We need that here.
That's a mouthful. Yeah.
It is.
It gets reintroduced every year. I want to say it's been 15 years, maybe more, that it's been reintroduced year after year. And essentially, it would give us federally mandated nurse to patient ratios that are comparable to what currently exists in California.
Right.
Which up until recently has been the only state in the US that has mandated staffing ratios. So I expect it's going to be reintroduced again here very shortly. Here's the really sad part. It just doesn't even get voted on. It dies in the Senate most years.
Wow.
So even, for example, 2021, 2020, when everyone was, clapping pots and pans and nurses were healthcare heroes and all of the representatives and politicians were, out there claiming, how much they love and support nurses and that, we're heroes and all of that. Even then, they couldn't be bothered to get the bill out of committee and simply hold a vote on it. So some years it'll pass, say the House of Representatives, but it typically will die in the Senate and not even being voted on. And that is the part to me that is the most frustrating.
Wow. So what would be needed for people to pay attention to this type of bill? Because honestly, we have the same problem here. So from a federal perspective, if we look at all the various different provinces that we have in Canada, so similar to all of the different states that you have, we're all doing different things when it comes to like patient staffing and ratios. Like, for example, BC, so British Columbia here is one of the only states, I think only provinces.
Yeah, and they're actually like on the West Coast as well. So
of course, they're like
linked.
They're literally linked, BC and California, and we're all envious, being like, how do you guys have this? But why is there something not federally? Why can't we all, instead of us doing this work in silos, why can't we all have the same legislation related to safe staffing? So from your perspective, what is it that might be needed for to have some life in the Senate?
Yeah, well, we need nurses to get involved. I'm sure you guys realize that, unfortunately, nurses as a whole, not to generalize, but I'm going to generalize, nurses tend to be very apathetic and not get involved. We are great at complaining at the nurses station, in the break room, in the locker room, but you ask someone to sign the petition, show up to the meeting in HR, do anything that attaches their name, or face to something, and suddenly they don't care so much, right? So we need nurses to really have some courage and get involved, and then take it to the next level. Find out who your representatives are and pester the hell out of them, right? So not just sending that one letter, that one email, that one call. This needs to be something that you and everyone that you know, your family, everyone, does on a regular basis. So you save your template, you email them, you tweet them, you at them on social media. You can make appointments and go meet with your legislators, do all the things and do it on a weekly or regular basis. And you make sure that you're communicating to them, hey, look, if you don't support this nurse legislation, please understand that I and my family and my friends will not support you in all future election campaigns, because that's where it
I
hits
think
them.
that's powerful.
Yeah, actually, I heard this story about how the California Nurses Association got patient ratios to begin with. They would follow politicians. They would book hotel rooms like right next to where they were staying. They pestered the hell out of them.
They bothered Arnold Schwarzenegger to death.
We probably need to do an episode on this separately, but they really worked at it. And I think that, like you said, Erica, one time is not enough. I think a lot of people think, oh, I signed this petition, I've done my job for the year or for the decade even, and I don't need to do anything else because I have done my job. But it's going to take so much more work and more people and more voices to actually get the ball rolling.
Yeah.
So I think that what you guys did was great in Ohio. And I know you had mentioned a little bit about it even during NurseCon. And Jessica, I watched the video about you talking about why you left bedside. And to be honest, that broke my heart. And I didn't realize all that was happening. And maybe Lenny can play a clip while we're talking, but could you share a little bit about what you were thinking or how that made you feel to share your story?
Sure. First off, I would say, I think, I've always dabbled somewhat in the advocacy by just kind of maybe bringing more like naming things or different things that are happening, like the nurses march or things like that. But Erica's the one that's really kind of drawn me into the advocacy part of it, which I am enjoying. Like, I didn't really know
I drag her to strikes around the country.
Yes. And I'm now a strike addict. Like, I want to be there at the strike. So I'm learning a lot. In the States, I come from Florida. We don't really have many unions. I couldn't even name one if you asked me, for nurses. So I was not familiar at all with how a union works and strikes and whatnot. So I've kind of been following Erica along the way and going to strikes and whatnot. But when I went in particular to the Ohio rally with Erica, I didn't know. I never planned what I'm going to say. I don't write a speech. I knew I was going to speak, but it's just not me. I kind of just wing things. And it's just what came to me. It's what came to me and what I wanted to say. And I think that day I was just feeling particularly moved in a sense because I felt sad. Like, I mean, normally I don't think people are used to seeing that side of me, but I do miss that patient interaction. I do miss what I did. And the fact that it essentially nursing got me to the point that it broke me down, which is really a hard thing to talk about. It just kind of spilled out of me. I had no idea that obviously that I would get emotional about it, but I feel like the bill that they're trying to pass there in Ohio, and obviously which needs to be passed everywhere, in my opinion. But it's so important because I feel like maybe what happened to me and what's happening to so many other nurses could be prevented. Maybe I would not have ever reached that breaking point where I felt like I couldn't take care of my patients the right way anymore. And what I'm referencing is House Bill 285, which is the bill that they're trying to get passed in Ohio. And that's what the rally was centered around. It's obviously for Safe Patient Care Act, for safe patient staffing ratios. It was put on by the late nurse Tristan Kate Smith's family. That could be a whole nother podcast, but she's a nurse here that you may or may not have heard the story, but that ended up taking her own life because of all of the stress and just feeling like inadequate, like unable to keep up. So her family is actually, even though they're not in the nursing field, their daughter was, and they're continuing to rally for her and make changes in nursing. That's their goal. That's their way of keeping her memory alive. And so, of course, Erica's very close with the family. They asked Erica to come speak, and then asked if I'd come speak. I know I'm rambling here, but it was such an honor to see the strength of this family, to try to even put on a rally after everything that they've gone through, the stress and loss of losing their daughter, and to see them try to turn it into something positive was just such a moving experience, and such a brave thing of them. And I think all of that combined is what really led to my speech that day. I think it was just wanting something positive to happen, and unfortunately, it just hasn't yet.
And I don't know what has happened or where we got lost along the way, but we are very, very lost, and it makes me sad. God, I'm an emotional person, and I apologize. I left bedside nursing a couple years ago, and it was a hard decision for me. I loved it. I loved everything about it. I loved working bedside. I'm a labor and delivery nurse. I love bringing babies into this world. But I realized when I got to a point that it broke me, and I wasn't me anymore. I wasn't that happy, jovial person that I had been over the years. And my mental health was taking a toll on me that I knew I wasn't a fit for it anymore. And sadly, as you can see by what they call the nursing shortage, or not really a shortage, but nurses that don't want to work bedside. It's happening everywhere, and it's taking a toll on people's health.
Yeah, thank you so much, Jessica, for sharing that side as well. Because, I think that's important. That vulnerability, it shows that, other people that might be experiencing what you experience, that they're not alone. So thank you for, sharing that and being able to go speak at those rallies. Because again, we do need nurses from all sorts of backgrounds, whether you're an advocate or whether you're learning to be an advocate. We need nurses to just be there and show up. And thank you for doing that. And again, thank you for being so vulnerable.
Glad to do it. I was honored that they asked me. Yes, thank you.
And how powerful is it for the family to be the ones that are taking this on? I mean, the situation should have never happened. No one should have to die by suicide because of our employers who are treating us so toxically that we feel compelled to take our own life. I think again, hearing Tristan's story is a story that we all can kind of relate to in terms of what many of us have experienced. And I think that the family taking this on is hugely important. I'm glad that you both were out there to support as well. We kind of covered a little bit about the rally, and maybe Erica, could you tell us just maybe briefly about some of your role that was out there? So I know you were already connected with the family. What were some of the things that you discussed that you think that our listeners might feel that it might be important for us to discuss here in Canada as well?
Yeah, I reached out to the family last October after the letter to my abuser that Tristan authored went public. And so we invited her family, her father and one of her sisters, to come on the Nurses Uncorked podcast. And they came on and trusted us with what is, a very, very painful story. And I've gotten close to her dad since that time, and he has been planning this for quite some time, the rally. And so he said from day one, "You're coming." It wasn't even an option. He told me, "I'm coming." And he said, "Jessica's coming." And he said, "Bring other friends." So the rally was kind of twofold. It was to support the legislation, the HB 285 there in Ohio, but also to promote the need and the lack of mental health support for nurses, because they've talked about the fact that Tristan would say, she can't afford to go to see a therapist, a licensed therapist. Right. Maybe the insurance only covered a handful of visits, if that even, and that she would like to have but couldn't. I'm not sure how it is in Canada, but here in the States, nurses often have the worst healthcare benefits, which is so ironic,
It's
right?
not the greatest here either.
Yeah, the ones that deliver the healthcare have the worst benefits often. And the ones that are usually cut right off the bat is mental health support.
Absolutely.
So some organizations will have like EAP counselors, employee assistants, but there might be one for an entire organization. So getting in to meet with them could be weeks and weeks waiting. And then, you might get in once a month, not once a week like you might need. There's very, very little support. And unfortunately, Tristan is not by any means the only nurse that has taken their own life.
Right.
Jessica and I both personally know nurses that have done this. And that is something I spoke about at the rally. I shared a story of a nurse that was a very good friend of mine. We went through nursing school together, and she took her own life just a few years into her career. So we really focused on both of those things at the rally. It was an amazing day. The energy was great. There was a lot of media attention there, and the Ohio Nurses Association was there representing, and some legislators. And I think it was very cathartic in some ways for Tristan's family.
Yeah. That's amazing. It sounds like a really great way to honor her memory. And the fact that it was led by the family, I think makes all the difference. Like it wasn't just like someone else who wasn't part of it decided to organize it and they showed up. Like they actually led the whole thing. And people might be surprised to learn that even though in Canada we have public health care, everything that you just described with not being able to access mental health care actually exists in Canada.
Yeah.
Because unless you're an inpatient in mental health, all of the counseling, this therapy, that's also supposed to be covered by our work benefits, which to be honest are not good. And EAP, same thing. It's like this Band-Aid solution for what the real problem is.
Yeah, so they're actually here in Canada. So mental health and those services, like Sarah mentioned, are not covered. So although people say, oh, Canada has great healthcare, everything's covered, mental health actually is not covered whatsoever. You have to pay out of pocket. And like you mentioned, some of our benefits are the worst. I remember when I was working for a particular organization, I looked at my mental health benefits, and it was $25 per visit up to a maximum of $500, meaning that like one visit is like $225, and they would pay for $25 of that up to $500.
Wow.
So like
so generous.
Right? And we were looking at other companies, like Starbucks would offer their employees $5,000 to $10,000. And we're just like, we're nurses. Like you said, we deal with some of the most difficult things. We've seen that, our statistics in relation to firefighters and police officers, we have more instances of PTSD, but we don't get the care that we deserve. So again,
and there's such a stigma around it still. There's still
100%. Yeah.
That's one of the worst parts of it, is that stigma of like, there's still this mentality of you should just be able to turn it off, snap out of it, or, know, and it's, I cannot believe,
that's part of the job.
I can't believe this day and age that, especially knowing as medical professionals where, depression comes from, and that, a lot of it is needing therapy and medication. And there's still this stigma with, that you can't be seen as weak. Or you're not weak, but the fear of being portrayed as weak,
right?
Yeah.
Crazy.
Yeah. And there's actually something called presumptive care, which is gaining a little bit more steam, where basically it should be presumed that due to the nature of your work, that you're going to be at increased risk of anxiety, depression, PTSD, and you shouldn't have to jump through hoops to prove that this is what you need. I think this is definitely something that's needed. Before we go on further, we're just going to take a quick break for a word from our sponsors. Attention hospital employees and retirees in Canada. Picture this, a benefit plan designed for casual and part-time hospital employees and retirees who aren't covered by their hospital's group health plan. Introducing Healthcare Providers Group Insurance Plan, a friendly partner dedicated to your health and well-being.
With affordable plan premiums and an exceptional support team, Healthcare Providers, also known as HCP, is dedicated to helping you every step of the way. Enrolling is easy, and you'll have access to a wide range of health and basic dental benefits from day one.
Already have health and dental coverage through another group plan? HCP still has your back. For less than $32 a month, the Signature Package, which includes life, long-term disability, accidental death, disease, and dismemberment, provides valuable income protection and peace of mind for the unexpected.
So take charge of your healthcare and financial security today. Visit healthcareproviders.ca to learn more.
All right, and we're back. And thank you so much for continuing the conversation with us and talking about mental health. And even I have my shirt that says it's okay not to be okay, because again,
Love
it's such an
that.
important thing that we continue to talk about mental health. But we're going to take it in a little bit of a different direction right now and talk about some of the other work that you both have done, some of the other great things that you've done. So we know that you guys are nurses and nursing podcasters. You have your Nursing Uncorked podcast. And we saw recently that you had interviewed the CNO of the ANA. The reason I'm chuckling is because we have our own stories about, talking to various different leadership in Canada. And it's just, I don't know. I always find it funny when these types of conversations come up. And I know that we heard that they reached out to you. So how about you tell us a little bit about that interview? Because I think maybe it's a little bit spicy. We'll see, right?
Ooh, ooh, spicy.
Let's start with Jessica.
Oh my goodness. I was there was a lot of nervousness, I would say,
Right.
going into that, because you want to remain obviously professional and respectful. And I want to give them props for at least taking the initiative and
Yeah.
doing something different
Yeah.
and reaching out and maybe trying to do something that they haven't done.
So did they reach out to you, or did you reach out
Yes.
to them?
They reached out to us, actually.
Just shocking.
And Erica's like, do you think that they know who I am? I'm like, oh yes, they know who you are.
Of course
They know
I'm
exactly
sure
who
they
you are.
did.
I said, why do you think they chose our podcast? So like I was saying, we wanted to remain professional, but at the same time, you want to do the right thing by nurses and healthcare workers and ask the hard-hitting questions. And
Right.
I had a harder time being like Erica was. Like, I felt like I was the mediator in a sense, like trying to bring us back down from this like
Good cop, bad cop.
yes. So where I was like, okay, so on that note, I think Erica sure told you. Like, I was trying to like but it was definitely a lot of nerves, but I think the podcast went great. I think we asked the hard-hitting questions. Erica, tell them, give them an example of one of the first hard-hitting responses you had.
Yeah. We did want to remain professional, and
Yes.
we
Right.
accomplished that. And, I have to say, before I share the example, we knew going in that there probably was not going to be any aha moments, right?
Right.
This is the
Yeah,
chief
for
nursing
sure.
officer of the American Nurses Association, right? Very well educated. You know that she's been through PR training, media training.
Right.
She's been through her legal department. She's comms teams, like all the things, right? We knew she was going to give us the very politician-like answers
Yep.
going in, and they weren't going to slip up and let
Yeah.
something,
Everything's be polished. Yeah.
slip out, right? So our goal really was to ask all the very difficult questions that nurses around the country would want to ask. And at least now they have something current from which to form an opinion, right? Because in the past, a lot of it's been rumors, or it's been in the past. No, now we have their current views, their current stance on all of the major issues that we can judge them on. So there really was no point in kind of going toe to toe on every issue, because, like I said, she wasn't going to let anything slip.
Right.
And it was very much a choose your battles, because we had a set amount of time and all these questions that we had to get through. So every time she was giving us a politician type answer, I'm in my head thinking, do I want to have a rebuttal to this? Because if I do, that's going to be another 15 minutes, and we probably
right.
totally,
ask
totally.
another question,
Yeah.
But there were a couple that I really couldn't let slide. And I think the one that Jessica is referring to was when Jessica had asked about, in retrospect, would the ANA have handled its response to COVID any differently? And she was going on and on about how they did so much, but, you know, the only thing they didn't do is really communicate it well to the nursing world. But that they, you know, did all these webinars and they had links on their website, and the webinars just struck a nerve with me, because I let her finish and then I said, you know, with all due respect, no one cares about your webinars or links on your website when you're wearing garbage bags and stapling together your N95.
100%.
My eyeballs got this big. I was like,
Jessica, where you're like, holy shit.
I was like, there she goes. There she goes. I knew.
It'd be funny if there was like the replay of that podcast with you guys, like with voiceovers of what you were really thinking. I know you can't do that,
little thought bubbles.
Yeah, like
that
what
would be so funny. You know what?
I was just like,
share a funny. I have to share a funny story with you guys that you don't even know about. The ANA reached out to us first when we were on the NurseCon cruise. Actually.
Oh my gosh.
And I didn't believe it. I thought it was a joke, or they don't know who we are, you know, something. And so we never thought it was going to pan out. And so we just kept emailing back and forth. And eventually, when we realized it was panning out, I had texted you, Sarah, and I said, guess what? Guess who we're going to have on the podcast? I said, you know, and I told you it was the CNO of the ANA. Well, not a week later, I see that you guys had the whole damn prime minister.
I know.
That it was random. It was crazy.
We'll have to get into that later, but also like they had reached out to us, similar to what happened with you.
Oh, wow.
And
that's
we
awesome.
we also asked some questions, although we had some meetings with the team beforehand, and they, you know, they had their direction they wanted to go. So we also were trying to be very respectful of our prime minister. Like, if you can imagine interviewing Donald Trump, it is a little bit unnerving.
I wouldn't want to see Erica in that one. No.
Yeah, I don't know how that would go. That'd be wild.
Oh boy. It was just like, I told Amie afterwards, like, my hands are so sweaty right now. They're clammy. And my heart's racing.
You two seemed very relaxed, honestly. Like listening to it, you both seemed like you were talking to like your brother, your buddy. Like you guys did great.
You know, I wish we could have had some of the outtakes, because we actually got to speak to him briefly before, and he said something really funny to us, so probably relaxed us. That's why we were like a little bit more casual, because he's like, you know, we asked him essentially like, what can we call you? And he's like, what did he say?
Okay, this is not a joke. He's like, whatever you want. He's like, you call me your leader, JT.
Your leader,
JT. I'm like, I'm not gonna call him that, but that
oh my gosh.
We're like, we'll just call you a prime minister. We're not gonna do this.
Mr. Sir, Prime Minister, sir. I don't know what I would say. Oh my gosh, you guys did amazing.
Well,
you did
amazing too, and I'm really glad that you turned it into a 2-part episode, because I'm sure it could have been a like 5-part episode, but I'm glad that you got as much out of it as you could, because it really helps nurses hear straight from their mouths, like their response to what happened, you know. And you did the right thing by asking all those questions. And I remember this part, like you said about the garbage bags, and Jessica, you were being very respectful in the way you said it too. And I was just like, you guys really have it. Like, this is not something that everyone can do.
Yeah, and of course, your listeners probably don't want sunshine and roses all the time. They want the hard-hitting truth.
Of course, like and that was the hard balance, is that of course nurses are angry, and they're wanting us to convey that anger. And I get it. I totally get it. You know, but it's at the same time, I mean, you're never gonna ever have anyone like this again on your podcast if you chew them a new.
Exactly. I literally had someone ask me when we met Justin Trudeau last year. They said, "Why didn't you throw a cup of water in his face?" And I said, "Are you joking me? Like, he has security there. I'll never get another meeting with him or any other leader again."
And that would just not happen. I don't know. I'm sure you've probably heard about the drama here too, in terms of just our political landscape right now. But it's just, at the end of the day, even if we're having tough, challenging conversations, we still need to be mindful and respectful, even if we disagree with the politician that we're speaking to. So
exactly. Again, it doesn't matter who it is. You have to.
I give you kudos. And again, we know that sometimes when these organizations reach out, that there might be a little bit of a PR stunt from their end as well. But I mean, it's important that we have those conversations.
I will say though, and not to defend the ANA, because God knows that's the last thing I want to do. But they did give us carte blanche to ask them anything. There
Yeah,
were absolutely no off limit, do not ask us this at all. They
Right.
did submit 3 questions. They said it would be nice if you could ask us this, but
Right.
it was not a requirement. And I think we did ask them a couple of them. They did not demand a list of questions from us prior. They were very much like, we are here, do with us what you want, which I was impressed with. Now, do I think that it was a media ploy, because their reputation has tanked? Yeah, absolutely.
Of
They're
course.
trying to reach nurses where they're at. And whether they like it or not, nurses are on social media. So it was
Right.
actually a very strategic move on
Oh, for
their
sure,
part.
Of course.
100%.
Yeah.
But nonetheless, you still got that opportunity, and I'm sure that not everyone, gets this chance. So it's still great, and I think that you did a great job. So I'm just wondering if you could each pick what the biggest issues in nursing are right now in the United States. What would you say they are? Let's start with Erica on this one.
Oh gosh, there's so many. It's so hard. I'm so passionate about workplace violence and union organizing, but I would have to say, if I had to pick only one, it would be safe staffing, to have
Right.
federally mandated nurse to patient ratios. Because really, if you think about it, if we are staffed appropriately, if you only have the safe number of patients per your specialty and acuity, then you are probably going to be able to catch more warning signs for things like workplace violence,
Right.
and have more time to communicate the other things, right? So yeah, everything comes back to staffing and ratios.
I agree with that 100%.
Mhm.
What about you, Jessica?
I mean, I definitely have to piggyback on that and say that would be my first one, because that right there can make or break a nurse, make or break your patient's experience, your patient's outcome. I mean, it's like the one thing that affects globally, like as far as the patient side and on the nurse side. So that obviously would be my number one, but I would say workplace violence, and with that accountability, like having different ways of holding these bigger organizations like hospital types accountable for things, so that they can't skirt around the way that things need to be done, whether it's with some, like, just if a workplace violence thing occurs in the workplace, like there has to be a strategic reporting system. There's got to be things in place that it's A, B, C, and D. You follow these steps, and if you don't, then there's repercussions for that. Because otherwise, me and Eric have talked about this a million times. Until that happens, they're going to continue to do things that benefit them monetarily or benefit keeping their image in a better light. Of course, that's the way that they're always going to try to brush things under the rug. So I think that those two, I mean, safe staffing and workplace violence are huge ones.
Yeah, I would completely agree, and I think we'd echo that. And let's say, hey JT, we need federally legislated patient safety ratios, right? I think again,
I keep thinking Justin Timberlake every time you
know,
say
right?
that. I'm like ready to start
the Prime
dancing.
Minister of Canada. It's like, hey, that's what we need. But I mean, I think all of those things that you presented are 100%. And I think the other thing people don't realize is that our problems, whether, yes, we have a border, but the problems in nursing across the board are similar. We have the same problems here in Canada that you do have in the US as well. So, and it's it's almost refreshing that we're like, okay, we're all saying the same thing. Now it's just how do we get all of our shit together to actually start mobilizing.
You should go back and watch the podcast we did where we interviewed a Swedish nurse. And I'm like, I want to go live in Sweden. I mean,
let's sounded all go. Amazing.
If you ever want to compare like complete polar opposites of the way things are done, have a Swedish. I mean, I'm sure there's other countries that are similar, but I can only speak from our experience.
Right.
I was just completely amazed at how much respect they have for their nurses there and how they're taken care of. It's the way it
They
should
get
be.
breaks.
Well, we definitely
It's
have to go back and
amazing.
listen. Yeah, for sure. I mean,
It's crazy.
again, I think it's just like, maybe even if we have similar issues, but the fact that you said like there's some nurses out there that are being treated well, I think again, this is something we need to look at. Again, we don't have to recreate the mold. If there are people that are doing better, we should take that and learn from them. You know what I mean?
Right.
That's true. I haven't heard any nurses in that country complaining. Like maybe there are issues. I'm not saying it's perfect.
Well, it's because
but
they get to go do their Swedish baths at the end of their
oh,
shifts, and
that's what I need.
we're stuck,
No,
crying,
even
driving on the 401 for
their locker
hours.
rooms look like a palace. Like
Yeah,
my
it's
gosh.
amazing. Their break rooms. Oh
It's
my
crazy.
gosh.
Well,
It is absolutely
have you seen
crazy.
their patient rooms? They look like your home would. Like it's not that medical feel, like everything's on wheels and kind of rolling around and broken. Like they actually look like a home. It looks cozy.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. Well, we discussed a lot of challenges, right? We know that things aren't working. We know that there are things that need to change. We know that that there's so much more that can be done. But again, we need to see if there's a light at the end of the tunnel. So, Jessica, let's start with you. Do you see a light at the end of the tunnel? Are there opportunities? And how would you have this conversation with, maybe your younger self or someone who says, I want to be a nurse? Is there a light at the end of the tunnel for us who are in nursing?
I think there can be. Do I think we're close to it right now? No, I think it's very far off. Sometimes I wonder, will I even see it in my lifetime? Like,
right.
I sadly, I feel like, people often ask me, are you going to go back to bedside nursing? And I'm like, not the way it is right now.
Right.
I can't answer that question because I would not want to put myself in that position again. I wouldn't want to risk my patient's safety. Like it genuinely frightens me. Like I got to a point that I literally, like everyone says, felt like I was drowning. Like I just could not keep up with the level and the demands and the pace. If bills get passed and, safe staffing is passed federally, maybe yes. But if we keep at the rate that we're going, where like Erica, has taught me all these bills, I didn't realize this get introduced and then swept under the rug. Like we keep up like this, it's going to take a long, long time. So I don't know the answer to that, but I mean, I would tell my younger self, I wouldn't change it. I had many years in nursing that I loved it. Erica's going to say, here she goes again with the good old days of nursing. She's so sick of
the good old days.
There was good old days. I remember it. I was a part of it, where things were hard, but it was hard in a sense, though, that everybody still had each other's back. And it wasn't this whole, you could get the help that you needed. You could have nurses on call, and it wasn't such a fight for nitpicking monetary nickel and diming of things. So I think I would tell myself to do it. Now, would I tell a brand new nurse thinking about it right now? I would say, think about it.
Go in with your eyes wide open.
Understand the nursing world you're going into today is completely different than it used to be. Know what you're up against. If you still love it and you're still passionate about it, of course, do it. If your heart's in it, your heart's in it. But I would have to explain it to somebody in detail so that they understood for sure.
And Erica?
Oh gosh, I have to say I tend to be a bit of a pessimist at heart. So that doesn't bode well. But I get very frustrated with nurses. As much as I love and understand and support and want to empower nurses, I get very frustrated because, like I mentioned before, the apathy and not realizing how much power we truly hold, because we are the largest profession in the United States. If we would only harness that and be collective, so I get very frustrated. I will say, though, that there are glimmers of hope. Gen Z nurses coming into the workforce, they very much are like, I will never tolerate this toxic work environment. I'm out. And I love that because nurses of, past generations, would never do that.
Right.
We would just stay and take it. And, we have to stay somewhere for so long. And that's like this everywhere. No, I love that nurses now are like, absolute. First of all, they're going to recognize it for what it is, which we never
Right.
did. We just always kind of let ourselves be the victims of gaslighting, right? So they're going to call it out. They're going to name it as gaslighting and toxic and all of that. And then they're going to say, change it or I'm out. And they're going to give them like one chance and then they're going to be out. So I love that. I also love the huge unionization effort that's kind of been sweeping the country the last 3-4 years.
Right.
When you look at it collectively, it's so tiny because unfortunately the way our laws are written, it's very difficult to unionize and you have to go facility by facility and it's very tedious and time consuming. But if you look at it from a broader perspective, the amount of nurses and organizations that have been unionized in the past 3-4 years exponentially outweighs the last like 30 years,
Right.
So if you it's all a matter of perspective, right? So I think there are glimmers of hope, but nurses absolutely need to dig down deep and find their courage to get involved.
Definitely. Yeah, I think that what you said kind of is what I would say too. If you had asked me even 3 years ago, would I still go into nursing? I would have said yes without skipping a beat. And now, if one of my kids, for example, wanted to go into nursing, I would also say to them, you really need to know what you're going to get into, right?
Yep.
Just because this is what I did or someone else did, things have changed so much. And the thing is, I would say one of the glimmers of hope is that there are probably more nurses on social media and advocating than ever before, but it's because it's so needed. Like, I don't know that this was needed as much as it is right now. So we always tell people, advocate any way you can, any way you feel comfortable. You don't have to necessarily attend a rally or, be on social media. There's so many different ways to advocate that you should just do what you feel comfortable with. And with practice, you can get better at it, more comfortable with it.
Yeah,
absolutely.
So the last question we actually had for you is just more about your podcast and how you got Nurses Uncorked started, because I don't know the answer to this, and this is something people ask Amie and I all the time. So maybe we could start with Erica and just let us know the story behind how you got this podcast started.
It's all Jessica's fault. She started it.
It is. It is.
She, Jessica and I were already friends, but she literally called me one night and was like, do you want to start a podcast? And I was like,
Sounds so
yeah,
weird.
but it's a lot of work and I'm terrible with the technical side of things. And so she was like, if I deal with the technical side of things, would you be interested? And I said, yes. And so I think we are a really great balance. We kind of pick up where the other one leaves off, and she deals with a lot of the stuff behind the scenes, which I would fail at miserably. She was just laughing at me last night about it.
I was.
And I do a lot of like the research and the evidence-based stuff,
It's a good
and so
balance.
we complement each other really well. She's funny. I'm never funny. Never.
That's not true. That is not true. You had some good humor with John Edward. I'll never forget that. You made me laugh.
Oh yeah, that's right.
Yeah. I don't even remember the joke, but it was good. I just know I'm a talker and I wanted to talk more. A lot of the comedy and short format things that I do, like, I just felt like I had a lot more to say.
Right.
And I wanted to do a podcast, but I was like, I don't want to talk to myself like the whole time. I'm like, that's not fun. So I was like, I need somebody that I can bring one thing to the table, but then, I need somebody that can bring the other stuff. And I immediately was like, Erica would be perfect, because I always say she's so smart, like she just knows all this stuff about nursing. And
I'm
learned
just prepared. It's all just
she's
preparation.
really is really. I pick on her all the time because she's like, she throws out terminology. Like, I say every podcast she comes out with some word that like is I don't remember, what the heck did you say last week? Like,
nefarious.
Yeah, I was like, is this your thesaurus word of the week? Like,
The word of the week is
Erica's word of the week. Yeah. So I basically, that was it. I was like, hey, I'll try to bring the lighthearted comedic side. You can bring the hard-hitting advocacy side, and let's we had no idea what we were doing. I'm sure maybe you guys felt
No
like
idea.
that too.
Yeah.
I didn't know anything about starting a podcast, doing a podcast. Literally, it was a learning
The
process.
blind leading the blind. It
So
really
good.
was.
Yeah.
But
We didn't even know how to
back
turn
on-
ours off.
Yeah, back on what I was saying was basically, I just feel like you can portray your message when you have more time to speak, because a lot of things can get misconstrued in short form video. Like, you may think that you're trying to present something quickly because people's attention spans are short. But on a podcast, you can formulate your thoughts so much better. And the podcast world, they know they're going into listening to a long format. Like, that's
Right.
podcast
Yeah.
listeners like that. So I feel like it definitely gives you that platform to really explain things the right way, where people can understand where you're coming from and what you're really trying to say. So, and I love that. I really enjoy it.
Yeah, I mean, I think podcast is the new form of media and news. I think this is where most people
I agree.
consume their form of, information. And I think that, we're going to be seeing more podcasts coming up. And I'm so pleased that there is another advocacy podcast called Nursing Uncorked. And I'm glad that you were able to come on the Gritty Nurse podcast with myself and Sarah. So thank you.
Thank you so
so
much.
much
Thank you.
having
Thanks
us.
thank you for having us. It's been a blast.
So before we end for today, can you let people know where they can find you? Do you have like a Nursing Uncorked website, or like how do people find your podcast?
You want to take that, Jessica?
Yeah, everything is at Nurses Uncorked. So nursesuncorked.com, all of our social media, YouTube, Nurses Uncorked. So that literally, if you just go and Google and type Nurses Uncorked in, you'll come across all of our stuff.
And it's on all the major streaming platforms. So
Yep.
Spotify, Apple, Audible, iHeart, all of them.
Amazing, amazing. And where can they find you individually?
Let's start with
yeah, I forgot about that.
Yeah.
Same thing. All of my handles are one thing, Nurse Jessica Sites, SITES. So that's how you can find my stuff.
All right.
Erica?
About half of mine are the Nurse Erica, and the other half are just Nurse Erica. It's Erica with a C. But yeah, if you Google it, you'll find the platforms. I'm on TikTok, YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, all of them.
Amazing. So anyone listening to this episode, make sure you check out Nursing Uncorked, and you will love this podcast. I'm already loving it.
Hit that subscribe button.
So thank you so much, everyone, for listening. If you have any thoughts on this episode, send it to us, and we would love to know what you think.
Thanks so much, and take care, everyone.